Welcome, everybody, to our next installment of our In Conversation With series. This is our special Earth Day edition, and we are pleased and honored to have Steve Groff from Cedar Meadow Farms, and also the author of his new book called The Future Proof Farm. So we're going to talk a little bit about regenerative agriculture and, of course, hemp and all of the wonderful things that Steve is a wealth of knowledge about. So welcome, Steve. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you, Erica. It's always good to talk with you.
You too. Now, before we really get started, probably the most important question of the day is, how is Grizzly?
Oh, Grizzly's doing fine. He enjoys this warmer weather, getting out a little bit more, and I appreciate you asking that. He's also getting used to two other dogs we have in the farm that my son has now, so he makes sure that he knows who's in charge. So, but other than that, Grizzly's doing fine.
Excellent. He is the pack leader. For those of you who don't know, Grizzly is the bestest good boy dog you'll ever want to meet, and also the mascot of Cedar Meadow Farms. So if you ever have the pleasure of going and visit, particularly during the hemp May season, you will be sure to see Grizzly and apparently now his new brothers or sisters.
Yeah.
Excellent. So again, thank you for joining us, and it is coming up on Earth Day. So we would like to talk a little bit about the role that hemp can play. A lot of people talk an awful lot about hemp and its use in mitigating climate change and stuff. And it really is difficult to cut through some of the hype. And I'm not sure that everybody always understands that, yes, hemp is great, but it has to be utilized within a bigger practice and kind of change of mindset in how we do agriculture in general in order for it to really shine and provide the benefits that we think that it can. So can you talk a little bit about your farm and your practice and a little bit of your journey?
Yeah, I'm a third generation farmer from southern Lancaster County in southeastern Pennsylvania. So we have a good growing season there for growing hemp and so forth. I started doing a practice called no-till or no tillage in the early 80s, and one of the early adopters of that in the area. And it was simply because of erosion control. We had ditches on our farm that I had to close those ditches in order to harvest my crops. I didn't do it back then for any kind of soil health or actually, the environmental movement or anything toward that. It was just, I wanted to close those pesky ditches. Well, what I didn't realize was by not tilling the soil and then later on adding cover crops and then later on adding diversity, I started to realize, you know what, we're actually mimicking nature here. And by that, my organic matter is rising, which is a clear indicator of the carbon that I've captured, or CO2, I guess I should say, that I've captured and stored in my soil. So my soil organic matter has gone from 2% to almost 6% in some of my fields. So I have captured a lot of CO2 over the years. And, we've heard that hemp is well known to capture CO2, but I must say I'm a little concerned about some people who are in the hemp space, and then they go till up their soil and, make raised beds and lay plastic and all that. Well, you're pretty much everything that hemp plant captured and stored, you're releasing it back into the atmosphere. And so there might not even be a net gain. And that's why my farm, we focus on regenerative agriculture principles, where we don't till the soil. We use cover crops. So we're constantly sequestering carbon year round and putting it back in the soil where it belongs, where it's a good thing. And that is a quick summary of what we're doing, growing hemp in using regenerative agriculture principles.
Excellent. And you mentioned raised beds and plastic, which is kind of a hallmark of CBD cultivation. And I believe that you are one of the rare farmers that actually does both, cannabinoid production and also fiber and grain production. So can you talk a little bit about the differences between the two and how the regenerative agriculture practices differ in the different types of cultivation?
So you're right, Erica, this in the CBD side of things, using raised beds and plastic is, I would say, fairly common, maybe the general practice. I don't use any of those techniques. I do no-till. We no-till the transplants into a cover cropped field. We leave the cover crop in place. That protects the soil and all that. Then I also have last year started growing fiber, and now this year I'm going to expand to seed, because I see here in our area that may be one of the more quicker adoptions with all the animals we have here in this area to be used. And so I'm just going to dip my toe in that for seed. I'm going to be working with Heartland Industries and the big USDA grant that they got, and for growing fiber hemp. And that is indeed, to your point of your question, Erica, we're going to be monitoring the organic matter of the soil for 3 years, just to see where is hemp in this whole, actually, can we back up what we think hemp is doing for the soil? And my role is to see what it's doing in what I'm going to call a mature soil health fields that have been using these practices. I mean, I haven't tilled any of my fields since 1995. And there's hardly a farmer in the country, in particular, there's probably no farmers that are growing hemp right now in fields that have not been tilled for over 25 years. So that's really what sets us apart. That sets us apart in growing everything we grow, including the vegetables that I grow. And that leads us to a healthier product. We've all heard it, healthy soils, healthy plants, healthy people. And so I feel like I'm legitimately doing it, because we are now backing up with science that my produce that I grow, my butternut squash, is better, way higher than average. We're also backing up with science that the CBD that I produce is better than what is out there in the market. And we're working with scientists in that regard. So, more data on that coming out in the year ahead. But it's exciting to be able to be in this industry and do it in a way that is very environmentally responsible. And my role as also, I'm not only a farmer, I'm also an educator. I've traveled all over the world and all over this earth. We're celebrating Earth Day, and try to help farmers to do what I have learned, and also learn from others as well. I certainly don't know it all, but I enjoy being in that peer group of farmers and researchers and those who influence farmers who are trying out to be better stewards of the environment. Because I believe that if we understand how the soil is designed to function, we will then better understand ultimately how the planet is designed to function. It all starts with the soil, and we can build upon that. And that's my mission in life, to be able to provide for the people a healthier food, and provide the planet in a way we grow our food that is not only sustaining, but actually regenerating it to where more originally was.
That's amazing. So if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, is not only you're basically preparing your land the same way, whether it's for fiber grain hemp or for cannabinoid hemp, because you're just using cover crops and crimping them or rolling them down and then planting directly into that stubble or whatever you call that. So not only are you not going through the labor of creating raised beds, but you're also not using plastic, which is not the most environmentally friendly thing. And you're just basically using nature to suppress your weeds, as opposed to using plastic. And that's amazing. So the what we can hopefully educate other farmers to doing is that these practices will serve them well, no matter what it is that they're growing. That it's not hemp specific, it's not any crops specific, but it benefits all of it, and better soil benefits anything that you want to grow there. We just happen to think that when it comes to CO2 sequestration, that hemp is because of its biomass and root system and stuff is a really, really good crop for that. But again, it's all dependent on making sure that you follow these practices year after year, because you can undo all the good you've done in one tillage.
That's right.
So that's pretty fascinating stuff. And so what do you think is the biggest barrier in getting these practices more widely adopted, particularly when we look to, like kind of big ag and the more really large commercial sized farmers?
I'll distill that question, that answer down to this: it's mindsets. And farmers have, generally we have narrow profit margins, and our biggest challenges are the weather and the markets. And so things that sometimes the weather is out of our control, although we can manage around it. The markets, depending on who you're selling to, could be out of your control. So in that context, farmers don't tend to take a lot of risk. But then aside from that, a lot of times they don't tend to take risks because they don't know, they don't understand. So I feel the other angle here, other than mindsets, then, is followed up with education. And so we can educate ourselves to learn how to use less inputs, use less tillage, use more cover crops, use more soil health principles. That takes time. Some farmers aren't willing to do that. Some of our older generation, they got a practice that works for them. They're not changing it. And then on the flip side, you might have some farmers who, they'll try anything that comes down to the pike, and it doesn't work out because they didn't do the education of it in themselves, their knowledge. So what I really want to do is encourage anybody who is growing hemp to look into this regenerative space, because now we have momentum. When I first started doing this decades ago, we didn't have any YouTube videos. YouTube wasn't even invented, by the way, and no internet. But now we have all that stuff. And now you kind of have to sift out what works for me. You can have a passionate farmer sharing their success, but that may be in an area of the country that's totally different than where you're at. So you have to kind of filter that into the geographic area you're in, and then also what your experience, what your equipment availability is, all these things. Soil health is a very simple concept if you're going to try to strive to that. But I want to tell you, very, very complex to be able to do it right. And a lot of that is because we just don't have the knowledge collectively in agriculture yet. But it's here now. We do more and more. So it's there's no excuse now, I will say, to start to adopt these practices. And I'll say, while we're on this topic, start small. Start with what you're comfortable with. And you may get excited over hearing someone talk, but start small, because it takes experience to be able to get good at this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think I'm personally kind of hopeful that for hemp's role in this is that growing hemp on a truly commercial scale is not being done yet. So we have this like kind of unique opportunity that the farmers don't have a preconceived mindset about how it should be done. So if we can teach them how to do it this way from the beginning, and then it should be a natural progression for them to see how it could benefit their other crops as well. So I'm kind of, I don't know if you agree with that concept, but I'm kind of hoping that we can use this as an additional opportunity to incentivize more farmers to actually look at these types of practices as an opportunity. And also with the cost of fertilizers kind of going through the roof the way they are, there's also that economic incentive, I think, to help foster looking at this in a more serious way on a much larger scale than maybe is adopted right now.
Yeah, Eric, if I could just chime in on that. You mentioned the price of fertilizer. That is helping the regenerative movement, because now farmers are realizing that I could grow my own fertilizer, particularly nitrogen, with legume cover crops. And the other side of it is the high fuel prices. Do I have to spend another $30 an acre for tillage when maybe I'll be able to eliminate one of 3 trips or something like that? So in a way, I will say this: farmers are primed like never before to do some of these cost-saving measures, simply because right now it actually shows up on their budget sheet if they're accounting for all this. So, none of us like high prices of anything, but the reality of it is sometimes that's what it takes for some of us to move to these less costly practices.
Right. Excellent. I hope it does take off the way that we really need it to. And it is a pretty big shift in mindset, which is sometimes difficult to get adopted on a large scale. As far as equipment goes, is there specialized equipment for particularly the rolling of the cover crop, and are those machines available on the scale needed for 50,000 acre farms to do it? And are the seed drills the same, or is there specialized drills that are required to plant within a cover crop, or how does that side of it work?
So the answer is generally yes, they're available, but there are certain areas of the country where they're not quite adapted as much yet to this. And I got to say, based on my previous comments, with the increased interest in this whole thing of cover crops and rollers, you could order, if you would want to buy a cover crop roller today here in the spring of 2022, you won't get it probably. They're sold out. There's so much demand for it. So in that context, it's kind of artificially a shortage because right now there's more people looking into this. So as far as seeders go, pretty much that is covered. You just have to, transfer your information to small seeds with hemp. Most of our seed drills that will plant small grains like wheat and barley and oats can plant hemp. Now, when we start using more precision planters, we typically use precision planters in our soybeans or our corn. Some of them now are narrow rows, like 15-inch rows, which is fine for fiber hemp. And those planters are actually better, but most of those planters are not set up for the small seeds of hemp. So there it takes some effort, time, and a little extra money to be able to make your planter to be able to plant hemp that way. So, but it's not necessary. But in the future, where we can literally singulate the seeds, like for fiber hemp, to put a high volume of seeds per acre, we can put them out 1 to 2 inches apart in a row. They're evenly spaced. It will make a more consistent diameter of a plant. The fiber people like that. So that's more advanced, and that's going to take a little more effort. But it doesn't have to be invented. It's here. You just have to adapt to it. I spent hours on our planter reconfiguring and setting it up and testing and tearing it apart and put it together. We now have it dialed in that we can plant fiber hemp in 15-inch rows. And that's one of the things with the work I'm going to be doing with Heartland Industries this year. We're going to be planting with a precision planter to see how precise we can drop those seeds. So it's kind of an advanced level, but you don't have to have that to get started.
So did you have to make adjustments? I've planted hemp for the last 5 years. Obviously, I'm not a farmer, but had a lot of help along the way, and just basically did it because, I was going to, like I had to. So of the no-till fields that we dabbled with, some of them were fantastic and some of them were absolutely horrible. So I'm curious as to what kind of adjustments, if any, did you have to make in your planting depth to make sure that the seed got into soil, but not so deep that it didn't germinate, and that the cover crop didn't actually rot the seed before it germinated?
Yeah, all common problems. And as I alluded to earlier, this is not easy. Sometimes you get lucky and it works really, really good first time out, but it's not easy. So this is where it gets into the advanced, discussion here, where like on my precision planter, we have row cleaners that clean away or clean most of the residue, which would be cover crops or previous plant residues, whatever the cash crop was the preceding year. But it cleans it away or levels the soil out a little bit so you can get a consistent depth. The challenge with hemp is it's a small seed, and if you bury it a 1/4 inch deeper than it should be, it may not grow. With corn or soybeans, it doesn't matter. It's still going to grow. So you have to be more precise in that way you place the seed. And a lot of these planters are designed to plant 1 inch and 3/4 to 3 inches deep. And so the way everything's set up, without getting into details here, the seeds, small seeds only planted a 1/2 inch deep do not get spaced correctly. They're just flying around down a seed tube and don't get as evenly spaced. We got narrow seed tubes in our planter now. We have what we call seed firmers that direct the seed to the bottom of the shallow trench. So these are some of the details I alluded to before to make it successful or not. I do get annoyed when people say, well, we tried no-till and it didn't work. Well, maybe you didn't do it right. And I'm not going to say it's going to work every time. I mean, I've had failures, trust me, but I'm learning. I'm getting more confident now in that. And I'll say one more thing here in this, Erica, because in the fiber side of things, seeds have been selected pretty good for early germination, germinating in colder soils. One of the things that's just frustrated us with the CBD varieties is they have not been selected to grow out in fields in cold soils. They've been selected to grow basically in greenhouses, in pots, and then transplanted. So we've had difficulty direct seeding CBD cultivars, but I know it can work. It's one of the things I'm working on, is trying to develop a more early emergence or better emergence CBD cultivars or varieties. So that's something that's going to take a couple years because you have to select for those type of things. So these are some of the very real challenges. And I want to make sure everyone understands that we're still kind of in the infancy stage here. It's like no-till was to corn and soybeans back in the 1980s. It struggled for a while. Now all the seed companies, they have varieties that grow in cooler soils and it can be planted early. That problem's been solved. The same thing will happen with hemp, but it's going to take some time. We got enough momentum now that it's worthwhile for breeders to take note of this and to make this system work in a regenerative context.
So the advantage of having an early, a more hardy temperature-wise varietal is that you can get a jump start on the weeds. Is that why you want to plant early, or is there another reason?
Well, mainly for fiber, early is better. You have the longer season to grow it out. I got to say for CBD, maybe later is better. Particularly now we don't have many cold tolerant varieties. So you have some options to control the weeds that do grow if you plant in the middle of June. And then the soil's warmer. It just makes everything easier on the CBD side of things. Plus, in our area here on the 40th parallel, planting in mid-June seems to be the sweet spot for most of our CBD varieties, because we don't want them to get too big in the fall and they fall over and break down and so forth. So we're actually leaning toward that. And that's just all about learning how to manage the different varieties that you're growing.
So you direct seed your cannabinoid varieties, is that correct?
I have, and am going to continue to do so because I'm determined to make it work. Because as I see it, go ahead.
Would a transplanter that's traditionally used in the raised bed plastic model work for transplanting clones or seedlings into the no-till environment?
Well, I've made it work, and that's simply because here in Lancaster County, there is enough of small-scale farmers, mainly Amish and Mennonite farmers, who have water wheel transplanters that are typically used for raised beds, growing tomatoes and peppers, what have you, that they've now put what we call a no-till coulter attachment to the front of a water wheel type transplanter, where there's two coulters that basically loosen up the no-till soil, and then the spikes of the water wheel planter, and those of you who have water wheel planters know what I'm talking about, they'll be able to go in a no-till situation. Now, we had to adjust the spikes. I happen to have one, a planter that was originally used for raised beds in plastic. I bought it new and I never used it for that. I made it straight to no-till. We had a little adoption to it, not much, but to your question, Erica, we can transplant transplants of hemp into a no-till cover crop system with very little effort in adjustments. And I will say now, some of you, I'm just going to put some names out there to be practical. Rain flow irrigation, which a lot of you know about, that's where most of these things come from. They will build spikes for you for no-till. And then Nolt's Produce Supplies has the no-till attachment for the front of a water wheel planter that's traditionally used in plastic.
Nice. So much exciting stuff, and love to see the innovations and yeah, like, and farmers like you just never cease to amaze me in your ability to take something and adapt it and make it better. So not only is this going to be great for the industry, but there's going to be opportunities there as well if we can get hemp to take off again in the way we want it to. There's going to be all kinds of opportunities for specialized equipment, and hopefully that we get to the point where no-till is the standard, and we wonder why it took us so long to get there. So the time is flying by a lot quicker than I thought it would. Not a surprise talking to you, it usually does. But I do want to give you an opportunity, going back to the education piece, you wrote a book.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the book and where people can get it and why they should buy it.
I wrote a book called The Future Proof Farm, Changing Mindsets in a Changing World. And that's really for those who are farming. It's not a how-to farm in a regenerative way. It's more of how do we look at this opportunity ahead of us. And so you can get it at stevegroff.com. Just look at stevegroff.com, my website, and buy it off there. And it's going to be inspiring for anybody that's interested in regenerative agriculture. It's also, I would say, for those who are educators in agriculture, to help build your confidence that this isn't just some fad that we're going through with this regenerative agriculture thing. And also for consumers to understand there's farmers out there that are making a difference in the context of growing food in an environmentally responsible way, which is what we're talking about here with Earth Day. And then also it's actually because of that, and this is a whole nother topic for another time, Erica, but where we can have better quality food. And even for CBD, and I got to mention our cedarmeadow.farm CBD products. I mean, we like to say that, we are the leaders in soil health in the CBD movement. I consider that a challenge that I have in front of me to help those who are growing CBD and the fiber as well to be growing as in a responsible way. So that's a lot of where my educational efforts come in my own brand in selling CBD products, but also helping other farmers understand with the fiber and the seed and all things hemp. I'm a believer in the future of hemp. I'm committed to it, and I'm going to continue to learn myself and to help this industry be able to be a model in how to grow hemp in an environmentally responsible way.
Excellent. And where can consumers go to try your CBD products?
Yeah, it's simply cedarmeadow.farm, cedarmeadow.farm, and you'll get to see Grizzly there. You want to see Grizzly.
Gotta see Grizzly.
Yeah. So we've added new products here with lotions and salves and the tinctures and everything. We're also expanding a little bit to help other small growers like us. If anybody needs some help with graphic design, website design, even some marketing tips, we want to help the industry. You can check in with us about that, and even doing some white labeling now. That's a new thing that we've just got to the point where we were able to do that. So if anyone wanted to get into the CBD space and didn't quite have all the dots connected, maybe we can help you with that too.
Excellent. And do you do any consulting on the regenerative agriculture side for farmers who are, ready to, after reading your book, actually get into the how-to, or do you have recommendations in that area?
So I haven't been doing as much actually one-on-one consulting. I'm more doing speaking engagements, going to meetings and conferences, doing keynote speeches, and I've traveled all over the place. Of course, now we're kind of creeping out from the COVID restrictions. That's starting to open up again. So I'm not doing so much one-on-one consulting, more so in the context of meetings and conferences is what I've been doing here most recently.
Well, maybe we can entice you to do some more sessions like this to get into some of the how-to for people who are really interested to help get the word out. We'll hit you up about that a little bit later.
Right.
And also, Because yeah, the wealth of knowledge that you have in this space is truly remarkable, and you've definitely been doing it way longer than before it was cool and the buzzword of the day. So that experience is invaluable and is going to lead us to a better place. Any final thoughts or anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't?
Well, I would just say that to develop your knowledge and expertise in what you do is important. It takes time to learn, to try things. Don't be afraid to try some new things in this, to try to be a better steward of this earth. And also seek out those companies who are actually growing hemp in an environmentally friendly way. And I think that's going to be the tide that rises all ships. I think we know that the future is with environmental stewardship. That's where the whole planet is going. So we're trying to be an example of that with the way we grow our CBD and our fiber and our seeds and any other products that we can get out of this hemp plant, this wonderful hemp plant. We're trying to be an example of that, and not only be an example, but also to help others to learn how to do it. So I guess that's my kind of my wrap up thoughts there. You know, let's do this together, and for better human population, better health, and for better planet.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. You're very inspiring, and we deeply appreciate everything that you're doing for the industry and agriculture in general. So keep up the fantastic work. Thank you for spending this time with us today. I hope you all enjoyed this installment, our special Earth Day edition of In Conversation With, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erica.